It was a morning unlike any other on the Sealess Wildlife Reserve, where the storm's fury had left the land drenched and silent. The usual golden light was replaced by a silvery glow as raindrops clung to flattened grass and scattered debris. Sucked, scattered debris. Broken branches whispered under the lingering wind, reminding anyone who saw them of the night's rage. Thick, damp air clung to everything, as if the earth itself was holding its breath. In this hush, an aerial patrol helicopter hovered overhead, its rotors slicing through the heavy atmosphere. Its mission? To survey every flooded creek and uprooted tree, to ensure no animal had been left behind in the storm's wake. And yet, what they would soon find was more astonishing than any flooded waterhole or fallen baobab. Drifting above the southeastern sector, the pilot's gaze swept over familiar tans and greens, scanning for hazards or signs of distress. Instead, his eyes locked on something utterly unexpected, a pale shape lying motionless beneath a shattered acacia. Acacia. At first glance, it appeared as if a phantom had been conjured by the storm, a ghost in the mud. The transmission crackled to life, and the pilot's voice, thick with awe, reported, "A base, this is Patrol 1. We found something remarkable. An injured white-maned male lion, possibly unconscious. Unconscious. We need a ranger dispatched immediately." In that instant, the roaring silence of the savannah felt even more profound, as if everything were paused in wonder. At the Sealess Ranger Station, Caleb listened to that single phrase, "a white-maned lion," as if it were a distant drum beat echoing through his bones. His sun-weathered skin and quiet demeanor spoke of years spent under the open sky, but he had never seen one in person. Only heard stories, whispered by village elders, about a creature straddling the line between the wild and the sacred. Those legends described a guardian born once in a generation, a bridge between humans and beasts. Without a moment's hesitation, he packed his gear. A compact chainsaw, a medical kit stocked with antiseptic, bandages and antibiotics, a coil of sturdy rope, and a single tranquilizer dart tucked safely in its holder. Yeah. Each item felt holy in his hands, a toolkit prepared not just for duty, but for reverence. The Land Rover's tyres churned through muddy puddles as Caleb headed southeast, the track narrowing and winding toward the coordinates the helicopter crew had given him to. Far. His mind drifted to ancient lore. In South African folklore, a white lion is more than an animal. It is a guardian of balance, born to stand between the wild and the spiritual world. What lay ahead felt like more than a simple rescue. It felt like stepping into a story few had ever lived. As the vehicle jolted over uneven ground, Caleb breathed in the scent of wet earth and fallen leaves, letting it steady him, reminding him that courage must be guided by respect. Over a low ridge, he saw them. The pride, he saw them. The tawny-headed male, his fur darkened by dampness, stood sentinel, flanked by lionesses, who watched every motion with unblinking golden eyes. Beneath their watchful gaze lay the white lion, his once majestic mane matted with mud, his powerful frame pinned under a tangle of limbs and broken branches. He wasn't moving, his shallow breaths barely stirring his chest. Caleb halted the Land Rover and stepped out, each careful footfall sinking into the soaked earth. He lowered his arms, moving with deliberate calm, aware that these lions were guardians. Never quick to attack unless provoked, but still wild enough that a single misstep could lead to violence. S. Caleb knelt beside his canvas bag and whispered to himself, "Respect, not force." He pulled out his stethoscope and pressed it gently against the lion's chest, feeling a faint pulse flutter under his fingertips. That pulse told a story of pain and survival. Cruel. His gaze shifted to the lion's hind leg, pinned under the massive trunk of the fallen acacia. Foe. Flesh had been crushed and the bone felt cold to the touch. The rain-soaked ground had seeped into every sinew, chilling the lion's body. Caleb's heart tightened, but he forced himself to be still. Sedation was not an option. The pride was too close. He could see one lioness, fur bristling, standing protectively near the front of the group. Any sudden move might trigger an instinct he could not predict. A low growl rolled through the pride, a rumble that seemed drawn from the depths of the earth itself. Caleb froze, meeting the lioness's gaze until she hesitated, then backed away by centimeters, an unspoken warning that he acknowledged with a slow nod. He exhaled and reached for his compact chainsaw, its cool metal catching the dim light, filtering through overcast skies. The saw's hum filled the air as he carefully began to cut into the thick trunk, each snarl of the blade sounding louder against the hush of the savannah. When the blade jammed against dense wood, Caleb didn't panic. He retrieved his crowbar from the kit and wedged it beneath the trunk's base. For what felt like an eternity, he strained his arms, every muscle burning, until the wood shifted just enough. With a crack that echoed like a careful promise, the pressure on the lion's leg eased. Caleb wasted no time. He sprayed antiseptic on the crushed flesh, sealing it from infection, then wrapped bandages tightly to staunch the bleeding. The lion stirred, his golden eyes flickering open, locking onto Caleb's. In that instant, there was a silent exchange. Man and beast recognizing each other's vulnerability. The lion's breathing steadied, each shallow gasp a sign that life had chosen to persist. But now came a new challenge, moving him. Caleb keyed his radio and called in for the recovery team. It was time to carry this majestic creature to safety. If they had that trust. As Caleb finished treating the wound, the pride began to shift from rigid guardians to curious onlookers. One lioness stepped forward, golden eyes never leaving Caleb's face, and gently nudged the white lion's muzzle, a gesture as delicate as a breeze. Her whiskers brushed his mud-streaked fur, and in that quiet moment, Caleb felt the depth of their bond. This lioness was more than a companion. She was a protector, bound to him by blood or loyalty. The younger male, perhaps a brother or a close ally, followed suit, bending to lick the white lion's face with surprising gentleness given his own size. It was a display of familial love that held Caleb's heart in a vice of urgency and reverence. Time was slipping away, but the pride's trust was clear. When the recovery team arrived clad in protective layers, Caleb and his colleagues carefully lifted the lion onto a stretcher. Every step was measured, every movement gentle, as if they were lifting a fragile relic, rather than a creature of raw power. So, the lion's eyes flickered with both fear and something like hope, as if he understood that this stranger might be his salvation. The pride parted, stepping aside to allow the stretcher to pass, their silent decision echoing through the still morning air. It was as if they granted permission for this one act of human intervention. With that, Caleb and the team carried the white lion, now named Seifu, meaning a sword toward the waiting vehicle, each stride laden with a mixture of relief and apprehension. Few are ever chosen to witness such trust between wild beasts and humankind. Weeks passed at the veterinary station as Caleb stayed close, his watchful gaze never straying far from Seifu's crate. Under bright lights, veterinarians cleaned wounds, administered antibiotics, and performed careful procedures to mend shattered bone and torn muscle. The antiseptic scent mingled with straw bedding and faint earth tones, and each day, as Seifu's body grew stronger, Caleb felt something shift inside him. A blend of pride and protectiveness. Gradually, the lion's weight on Caleb's heart lightened. Word of the rescue rippled across the reserve and beyond. Footage of the pride standing guard went viral, stirring hearts in cities far from the savannah. People marveled at the image of those tawny lions forming a silent circle around their fallen brother, and the story became a beacon of hope, a reminder that the bond between humans and wildlife can be one of compassion, not conquest. Finally, the long-awaited day arrived. Under a golden dawn, Caleb stood on the open plains, heart steady but pounding with anticipation. The crate door opened, and Seifu emerged, each step sure and strong, his ivory coat gleaming under the rising sun. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to still as the white lion raised his head and let out a mighty, earth-shaking roar that rippled across the grasslands. The pride, gathered near the very acacia where his ordeal had begun, answered in kind, their collective roar a triumphant chorus that spoke of reunion and renewal. Tourists in distant vehicles fell silent, eyes wide, as whispered awe spread through their ranks. In that roar, Seifu reclaimed his place, not just as a survivor, but as a living legend. In the weeks following Seifu's rescue, images and clips of the event circulated across social media and news outlets, capturing hearts worldwide. Online forums buzzed with admiration, and wildlife organizations recognized the remarkable bond between the white lion and his pride. Donations poured in to support conservation efforts in the Sealess Wildlife Reserve, fueling new initiatives to protect other vulnerable animals. Visitors from nearby regions planned pilgrimages to witness this legend in person, hoping for a glimpse of the rare white lion in its natural habitat. Educators used the story in classrooms to teach students about compassion and coexistence with nature. Back at the reserve, life gradually settled into a hopeful rhythm. Rangers like Caleb carried on patrols with renewed purpose, reminded daily of the fragile line between life and loss. Each time Sefu appeared on the horizon, his powerful white silhouette inspired both rangers and tourists alike. Visitors would pause their cameras, eyes glistening with awe, as the white lion moved gracefully among tawny piers. The legend of Sefu spread beyond borders, a tale of trust that resonated with anyone who understood that in protecting wildlife, we protect ourselves. Later, a framed photograph found its place in the ranger station's main hall. It captured Caleb's gentle hand resting on Sefu's flank just before the lion's release, engraved with the words, "Other day, the pride stood guard." That image served as a daily reminder that human and animal bonds are forged through respect and empathy. The story became part of local folklore, retold around campfires and in village gatherings, where elders spoke of balance and unity. Children drew pictures of Sefu, the white lion who survived against all odds, teaching their friends that compassion can ripple through the world. Caleb often paused before that photograph, recalling the pride's silent watch and the weight of responsibility that day. He remembered how fragile life can be, and how a single act of kindness can spark something far greater. In a world where wild encounters often end in fear or exploitation, Sefu's journey stood as a testament to resilience, trust, and the possibility of harmony. When you think of this story, remember that every rescue and every gentle gesture speaks to the beauty of coexistence on our shared planet.